Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon, and you know me. I've met most of you, though not all of you have attended the Zoom meetings yet. Okay, and as we move into this climate of academic instruction that requires such great flexibility on both the teacher's end as well as the student's end. This YouTube video today is a gesture towards a seeming time lapse that we're all living in. Though our classes are generally Tuesday and Thursday night at 7:10. Some of y'all are living in California, some of y'all are in China. So this is a gesture at making a more cohesive class meeting while balancing our live Zoom class instruction with these YouTube videos. So during today's virtual lecture, we'll be employing our textbook together. So this YouTube meeting will be interactive as much as like a interactive lecture can be. So make certain that you have your textbook out to follow along with the kind of logic as it unveils itself of the lesson we'll be working with today. If you haven't bought this book yet, buy it. We need the second edition of this book. In conjunction with the book that you have, Understanding Rhetoric, the graphic guide to writing, we'll also be using passages from Anton LaVey's The Satanic Witch. You don't have this book, but I do, and I love this book. And I'll be using this book as a resource for our discussion today. And your writing journal assignment, remember you upload those to me digitally, and they're 25% of your grade. The first one I'll assign during this YouTube lecture today, and it will be structured around the Satanic Witch in unity, cohesion with what we read in Understanding Rhetoric, the graphic guide to writing. But before we start, just as I would any class meeting, I'd like to ask how you are. And though I can't hear you, I love you. I can't hear you. Answer that question just to yourself. Do a momentary self-check-in. How are you? You're in my thoughts. How are you? I hope that you're super healthy and super stoked to just develop some more hobbies and all this free time we have. Right on. The pendulum always swings both ways, so enjoy the free time now. Okay. Let's start with our textbook. Understanding Rhetoric, a graphic guide to writing. Please open your textbook. And we're going to talk a little bit about just the book culture for a second of this, right? So this is the binding of the book. This part's the binding, right? When you have a physical book, this is the binding, right? Then as we move into the pages, this is called front matter. So moving past the front matter, the title page, into contents, right? And you can see the way that logically this textbook is organized. We're going to move into issue 1, Why Rhetoric, on page 37. So come with me on this reading journey, and let's all turn to page 37. In Understanding Rhetoric, the graphic guide to writing. So over the course of our YouTube class today, my dog, Kangaroo, is in the background, and she's going to be barking to say hi. You know, Kang is part of the party. Let me show you guys her. Right? Why not? Good girl. That's Kangaroo. That's my quarantine buddy right there. Okay. So now we're here on page 37. This cool little Dr. Frankenstein, Aristotle page. And so what we're going to do together right now, the first kind of part of instruction for this lesson, is read together issue 1. Right? So that means page 37 to 69. I'll read with you. We'll go from there. Pause wherever you are. If we were in live class right now, I'd call on you and to take the pressure off of me. I'd call on you and I'd ask you, what are some key terms, just like in those annotated bibliography entries that you write? What are some key terms that you see popping up in your reading so far? But I'll call on myself. Largely, so far in my reading, I'm on page 40. I'm understanding how this textbook is defining and conceptualizing the term rhetoric, and separating it from this kind of dirty term like lawyers and politicians use rhetoric to make one confused. Instead, it's moving back to deeper Greek origins of the etymology and creation of rhetoric and inquiry, and reminding the reader, us, that rhetoric is simply a way to facilitate discussion. Unpause. I'm on page 40. What page are you on? Doesn't matter, just good to know, right? Keep reading. pause. What page are you on? I stopped on page 45. Continuing to discuss in this sustained, silent reading exercise, main terms and ideas that are showing up so far in our textbook. We have two new key players in our understanding of the concept of rhetoric, Aristotle and Plato. So seemingly, Plato's understanding was that rhetoric got in the way of or subverted civic matters. Aristotle disagreed. As Plato seemingly had an understanding of rhetoric as something that was unnecessarily analytical, unnecessarily in the realm of thought. Aristotle saw that rhetoric can play an educational role. The term playing the devil's advocate, in which one can put their own viewpoint, their own way of being, into someone else's, especially if someone else has a different perspective or way of being. To play the devil's advocate is to play the role of the rhetorician. Someone who is looking at different viewpoints, different ways to interpret, analyze, and move through a situation. And this specific situation, the rhetorical one. As we continue on through the quarter, your next annotated bibliography entry will be an article entitled just that, The Rhetorical Situation. For the spaces in which we write, the audiences in which we write, civic matters compared to philosophical matters, compared to like esoteric matters and ways of being. All are important in the spectrum of learning how to write and writing well. So far we have rhetoric as a way of communicating. Rhetoric as a way of thinking about how our language imports values, insights, belief systems into those that are listening or reading. And how those value systems insights and beliefs can shape our world. The writer Louise Hay, the writer Don Miguel Ruiz are both New Age writers who understand rhetoric in this New Age way that what we say, we manifest. So if one is saying, I am so intelligent, I am so intelligent, I am so intelligent, you indeed most likely will facilitate the cognitive processes of becoming more intelligent. Now, however, intelligence is measured person from person, and it situationally changes. But Louise Hay and Don Miguel Ruiz would say that your word is the only thing that you have to create your sense of being, yourself. And what you say indeed becomes true. Our textbook agrees in many ways in this understanding of rhetoric, in that the language people are choosing to use displays to the listener, whether consciously or unconsciously, deeper value systems, belief systems, and insights. This is why a lot of times rhetoric is used as like a pejorative against like politicians and lawyers and the president and teachers. Because rhetoric can mean listening to the underlying assumptions that the speaker writer has based upon word choice, sentence structure, and larger situational context. Plato, rhetoric. Aristotle, rhetoric. Okay. On now page 45. Let's continue reading. Pause. What page are you on? I stop reading right now on page 53. This book moves quickly, doesn't it? What is it like for you to read images alongside text in this graphic novel kind of way of reading? It's unique, no? This is a unique textbook, I think. What are some new ideas that have arisen over the course of your reading now? Let's look back together. Timing is everything. A chaotic email is one sent within good timing. Ethos, pathos, logos. On page 49, I personally was strongly drawn to the illustrations on the top of this page. Reflect me, reflect me, reflect me. Rhetoric is really powerful. The way that you use your language, any of us, is so powerful. Anton LaVey would agree that the power of language is the way to make friends and influence people. And a clever rhetorician can insert their own values, belief systems, and ideologies so deeply within their mode of communication that it, like a spider, it is this clever web that they weave. And before you know it, you're reflecting what they are expressing ideologically, whether you realize it or not. A good writer and a good rhetorician, and all of you have the capability to be that, if you're not already. A good rhetorician has the ability to find deep standing in self, in their own logic, and to not be swayed nor afraid of whatever incoming, inundating rhetoric is filling their atmosphere. They're clever enough to not reflect back whatever is reflected at them. Let's keep reading. No one can speak well unless he thoroughly understands his subject. As you continue to read, I'll draw your attention to page 61. Questions for rhetorical analysis. Turn to that page. 61. Who is the intended audience for the text? What is the purpose of the text? Does the author seem credible? What's your reaction to the text? What emotions does it evoke? How are the elements organized or arranged? Does it seem logical? When and where was the text written? As we're continuing through the final few pages, largely like animated pages within the marginalia, rhetoric. We're seeing, learning, reading about the important role of rhetoric in the world to identify effective arguments, ineffective arguments. You guys. Isn't my dog so cute right now? She's so cute all the time. We're looking at the ways that rhetoric is chaotic in this interesting time that we're living. A time of fear-mongering, whether necessary or not. The rhetoric or language which we are inundated by, and those that we are allowing ourselves to be inundated with, are important. It's important to note the logic, the ethos of the news information about the coronavirus that we are receiving. We're learning about rhetoric and space. Different spatial situations require a different rhetorical appeal. An email you'd send your friend is a different one than you'd send your teacher, is a different one than you send your boss. And the ways that we use ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos determine much of that rhetoric. I'm on page 64 right now. What page are you on? Let's continue this reading of this chapter together to page 69. Please continue your sustained silent reading. Okay. That was a lot. This chapter has a lot of information. Good information about how to use rhetoric and why rhetoric is important. The intention to have us read this together is one, to participate in sustained silent reading, to begin to train all of our brains together to sit and focus and read, which is challenging. It's just a habit of mind, like any habit of mind, and we need to strengthen that proclivity just by doing it. So now, let's continue to explore rhetoric, keeping this context of what we read in our textbook, by working with, here's Anton LaVey, a reading by Anton LaVey. So all you need to do is just sit back and relax. While I read, this passage from Anton LaVey's The Satanic Witch, entitled Bitchcraft, Chapter 6. Virtue is its own punishment. Nice girls lose. And one of the surest signs of potential proficiency in witchcraft is an inability to get along with other women. This doesn't mean that you should not know how to get along with members of your own sex, because a successful witch can. It simply applies that you are certain to meet with disapproval from many women when you are not purposely trying to gain their approval. If you go around worrying about impressing women, who of course love nothing better than to know you care about what they think, that automatically places you at their mercy. Outside of an admittedly homosexual group, all social circles that are composed of exclusively men or women serve as retreats rather than boosts. To a group of highly successful businessmen, an exclusively male organization can serve as either a retreat or contact ground for further business goals. This, in many ways, makes sense. But for women, who are for better or worse 99% dependent upon the support of men, to congregate together, seeking each other's approval, it is at best commiseration. At worst, ego-shattering delusion, and at all times indicative that something is missing in the way of erotic or emotional fulfillment. Every witch needs a friend, just as anybody else. But unless you can be the leader in a group of women, forget it. No other gal is going to lead you down the path of success unless there's something in it for her. Romantically, financially, or vicariously. And for that matter, neither are very many men. At least when pleasing a man, you possess that little something different, which makes all the difference. The representation of the demonic self. I have found that the most proficient witches are those who prefer the company of men to that of women. I'm sure everyone reading this has lost out at one time or another simply because she was only concerned with her responsibility to another girl. Chances are good that other girl planned and plotted very carefully whatever move it was that led to your romantic or domestic failure, yet was never once looked upon as a villain by anyone else. If you will think back on your own personal situation, The other girl involved was one who didn't quite have the things going on for her that you did. Maybe she was single and you were married, and she envied you for your smooth-running marriage or handsome husband. Or possibly she was married to a real churl while your husband was a prize. Maybe it was an economic jealousy or one inflamed by your talents or knowledge, or possibly looks. Wait a minute, you say. Quote, the woman I have in mind was very good looking, and I should look that good. It couldn't be that, end quote. Don't forget what you've read earlier in this book. Your standards of female beauty don't count. Naturally, you will think a gal is a real doll who looks like you would be like to look. Invariably, she will be your complete opposite type. A girl's worst enemy is always one who is the same physical type as herself, with slight modifications, and her best friend is the complete opposite of herself. If you are tall with an angular face, your best friend will be short with a round face. If you are fair-skinned and blue-eyed, your best friend will be olive-skinned with dark eyes. These are not oversimplifications, but excellent examples. The similarity in appearance between you and your worst enemy is an important factor in the ability which can have to protect those who will bear watching. Therefore, there are two types of women to watch out for and who will take away what you have, or at least spoil your happiness if given half a chance. The first is the girl who is similar in appearance to yourself, but not quite as pretty. The second is the one who is totally opposite in appearance, but not quite as pretty. If it sounds as though I'm contradicting myself, consider this. It's easy enough to pass judgment on a girl who looks like she might be your sister, finding all kinds of faults in her appearance. For this reason, an objective physical evaluation is seldom made of a woman who resembles in any way the person who is passing judgment. Two girls of identical appearance would be certain to find many flaws in the physical makeup of each other that would be lacking in whoever was speaking. Therefore, the old cliche must be considered before negative judgment is passed. What does she have that I lack appearance-wise? If you cannot find anything, then you'll find her to be no real threat, but one who would like to be. Concerning other women of totally opposite types, the reverse is true when it comes to evaluating beauty. If a girl who looks like you will invariably get a non-objective and critical evaluation, your female opposite will receive plaudits on her good looks, even though she might be sadly wanting for a lure. Here is where the lurking menace lies. Because your opposite, and often your best friend, is seen in a non-threatening light, you are willing to credit her with a degree of beauty she very often lacks. While you tell others of her beauty, they listen. And they look, and possibly they are not impressed. And she knows it. But you fool, don't. Resentment builds. And out of resentment, however deeply buried, will come outlets for it. Little plots are hatched, And soon you find yourself saddled with a genuine psychic vampire who will drain you of your vital energy and actually weep and moan. And not out of happiness. Whenever something nice happens to you. And you, sweet, nice, virtuous, understanding thing that you are, pick right up on those vibrations. Those feeling that there's something wrong. You concern yourself all the more with your friend and her welfare, as by now she is bound to have developed several problems. Make a little test and tell a friend you suspect of being a rival of some wonderful thing that has just happened or is about to happen, even if you have to invent it. Then watch her problems begin. Observe how her illness flares up or financial problems suddenly appear, or she bangs her car up or her child's tonsils become infected right now. If she shows her hand after 3 such tests, you can be sure you don't need her for a friend. I have written in my Satanic Bible, thrice cursed are the weak, whose insecurity makes them vile. And these types can be very vile indeed, yet hide their viciousness admirably. All this falls into the classification of resentment. And resentment and disapproval go hand in hand. To be a resourceful witch, you must be able to see the bitchiness in other women for exactly what it is. Then, in your own way, beat them at their own game. You must learn to be a worse bitch than they. So that passage that I read, from page 185 to 188, Chapter 6, Bitchcraft, from Anton LaVey's The Satanic Witch. This book was written as the compendium, the sister text to Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible, a book founded on an ideology created by Anton LaVey in the late 1960s. So for the context of this content, flower power, Vietnam War, the creations of counterculture. Where? In the Bay, where we are. Anton LaVey lived in San Francisco, and he went to school for criminology at San Francisco City College. Know that this passage is meant to inflame you. This book, everything that Anton LaVey writes, is meant to rile up, disturb, or bother the reader in some way to elicit response. For that is what a strong rhetorician does. A rhetorician takes language and molds it to their means, whatever means they have. So rhetoric and conveying a message go hand in hand. For your writing journal, for the assignment this YouTube video is kind of created around, I would like you to put in conversation the content of these 2 texts thus far. In our reading of issue 1 of Understanding Rhetoric, A Graphic Guide to Writing. We read about the role rhetoric plays in having the receiver, the listener, reflect back deeper values, belief systems, and ideologies that the speaker or writer is expressing. For 10 minutes of sustained typing, 10 minutes of sustained typing, put on a timer. I ask you to examine the rhetoric used by Anton LaVey and the short excerpt I read from The Satanic Witch, specifically the chapter that we read, just the beginning of the chapter on bitchcraft. Consider in your reflection, beginning by returning to page 61 in your textbook. What is the purpose of this text? Who is the intended audience for this text? Women only? You know, when was this text written? 1969. This was written over a course of a lifetime. Published like in the early 70s. Now in 2020, like our spectrum of gender is so fluid and so different than in this time of like pushback of Americana, of creation of counterculture. Given the context, the time of Anton LaVey's writing, is what he's written timely? Does it stand the test of time? What is your reaction to the content that you read? What emotions does it evoke? Do you agree, but with a difference? Do you disagree with reasons? Or do you both agree and disagree simultaneously? In what we read, how were the elements of logic organized? How did LaVey use his language in an attempt to coerce the audience to commiserate or empathize with his viewpoint? What's the larger empathetic appeal of his viewpoint? Biologically, Anton LaVey did and would identify as a man. He, him, a man. If one biologically identifies as they or them, how does that change one's reading of this text, one's understanding of the content? Does the author seem credible? You might not have enough information to answer that question, or you might, just in the content alone of what you heard, you might have opinions about the author's credibility. And you can also do your own kind of reading, your own kind of research around Anton LaVey. We'll continue to read this book in many ways over the course of a quarter, so this is your first introduction into it. When writing your 10-minute writing journal response, remember, it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be like typo-free or grammar-free. What is important to me is I see that you are consistently forming an opinion about the content of what we read. And within that opinion, I can begin to see your writerly style emerging. Disclaimer. as we continue to do writing journal prompts, there will most likely be things that we read that are somehow unsettling or uncomfortable for you. Know that, number one, I got your back. So no matter what, I'm on your side. Number two, counterculture, subversionist literature should be shocking or somehow jarring to the reader, to the receiver. Many banned books are banned for that reason, because somehow that knowledge is seemed Promethean in nature. Promethean knowledge is knowledge that once the receiver learns that knowledge, their viewpoint on the world is so changed that they can never move back to their previous state of being, and thereby they cannot cohesively reintegrate with society at large. Many acid heads, LSD users, experience this Promethean sense of knowledge, which is one of the dangers of using psychedelic drugs. Modern philosophers like Alan Waits would say. And that when you are learning knowledge, whether it be book knowledge, knowledge by experience, or knowledge by external experience, like psychedelic drug use, once you find that knowledge that is veiled to most of the population, it is difficult or impossible to reintegrate with the population. And that way you become a danger to the larger herd, the larger society at play. I hope that my students around the globe are able to watch this YouTube video. And I hope that it creates a subversionist nature, a subversionist spirit. The true American spirit is a revolutionary one. And I hope that you feel the importance of studying rhetoric and understanding rhetoric so that you have the power to revolt. You are so powerful. You are such a powerful being. All of you are such powerful beings who have so much value and so much to offer the world. That's all for today. I look forward to bringing more YouTube writing assignments to come. Please take care of yourself. Remember, you turn in this writing journal at the end of the quarter. Enjoy what is left today of this full moon, Tuesday. The full moon is in Libra. This means that there will most likely be feelings of calm and equanimity pervading the atmosphere. Enjoy the full moon. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you later.